A few weeks later, residents started exchanging their banknotes for gold coins again. This put MCA and Mitsugoshi banks under great pressure. Even their gold coin assets have almost run out in the safe. MCA also closed several bank branches to minimize the exchange of these banknotes. But this is also what makes citizens increasingly believe that the value of paper money is really not comparable to gold coins. Then Garter reported to Geton that the mastermind who made the counterfeit money was not yet known. But what is certain is that the goods train that entered the Midgar capital came from the Snow Fox Company led by Yukime. Of course, Geton was shocked and angry because it turned out that Yukime was involved in this counterfeit money case. On the other hand, Gamma discussed with the Shadow Garden members about the current situation. Beta has also given Eda an important memo from Shadow, and Eda tried her best to translate it. A few days later, Gamma reported today's situation to Alpha. But unfortunately, Alpha always pondered after finding out that John Smith was actually Shadow. She was very sad because Shadow no longer needed her. Even so, Gamma still believed that Shadow couldn't possibly do something that cruel. But Alpha said that Shadow no longer needed Shadow Garden. The members of Shadow Garden had failed to live up to his expectations. Because of that, Shadow threw them away and chose to go to a place they couldn't reach. Alpha's pessimism also spread to Gamma, who felt very sad due to Shadow's betrayal of his own organization. Then New reported to Alpha that Geton was apparently a member of the Diabolos cult. In order to destroy Mitsugoshi, Geton plans to make fake money. Even though they didn't know about Mitsugoshi's background, they remained alert until they made this plan. After hearing that, Alpha immediately realized something about Shadow's treasonous intentions. This means that Shadow already knew Geton's plan earlier than the Shadow Garden members. Because of this, Shadow deliberately made fake money and circulated it before Geton. Then Beta also reported that the important memo code from Shadow had been successfully translated by Eda. And when Alpha read the memo for a few minutes,
君たちは恨むかもしれないけど、昔みんなで姉さんを救出したあの施設に貯めている。これまでの名を捨て、協力者と偽札を作ることとなった。
ある計画のために。悪いけど、僕は裏切ることにするよ。
僕はこの選択が
With that many gold coins, Mitsugoshi could restore the residents' sense of trust. Then Geton will lose MCA and all the assets there. Not long after, Alpha called Delta, who had just quietly returned to base. Of course, they are very happy and grateful that Delta is still alive. Delta tries to explain what happened, but she is confused by the situation she is currently experiencing. According to Delta, Alpha and the others were very strange today. On the other hand, John continues to kill Garter's subordinates who want to know the mastermind behind the counterfeit money. He had been having fun doing this for months. Yukime also left a message to John that the gold coins collected could belong to John. This made John very happy because he could become very rich in preparation for living another 300 years. Currently, Yukime was going somewhere, so John took the time to go to the counterfeit money factory first. He plans to create another cool storyline after bringing all the gold coins there. But it turned out that John's gold coins had disappeared in an instant. Of course, John was shocked after learning about this. Not long after, Yukime's subordinates reported that Geton probably already knew the location of this factory. But they were also surprised because the gold coins stored there had just disappeared, even though they had just received news that Geton's subordinates would soon be coming to this factory. Then John was angry with Geton because he had taken all John's gold coins that easily. 絶対に返してもらう。貴様は私の大切なものに手を出した。At the same time, Geton meets Yukime to solve the problem of counterfeit money in a large snowfield. Of course, Yukime immediately took revenge because Geton had killed everyone in Yukime's village first, including her mother. In fact, they have been engaged for a long time and spent many beautiful days together. However, all this changed because Geton was forced by the Diabolos cult to become part of them. John finally came to know where Geton had hidden the gold coins. But unfortunately, John didn't ask Geton straight to the point. He simply asked, "You have something valuable, right?" You took it, right. I just came to reclaim something precious. After hearing that, Geton was surprised because he thought that what John meant was Yukime. Of course, this made Geton angry because John had also ruined his plans. John cooperate with Yukime so that MCA can be destroyed like now. Meanwhile, Yukime, who saw their fight, also misunderstood. She thought that John had come there to save her even though the cooperation contract only applied to the counterfeit money scheme. Then John asked Geton to say something he had to say now. John would have continued to beat Geton to death if he hadn't said it. After hearing that, Geton and Yukime misunderstood John's meaning again. John also didn't understand what they meant from the start of this fight because all John wanted was gold coins. Then Geton finally gave up and pointed at Yukime. What Geton meant was that he entrusted Yukime's life to John. Geton actually still loves Yukime and asks John to help look after her. But John didn't think like that. Instead, he thought that Geton had buried the gold coins he had stolen right under Yukime. Moreover, John only heard the faint sound of Geton saying Yuki. In Japanese, Yuki means snow. Then Geton finally realized that John was the strongest person he had met in Yukime village. After Geton died, John immediately healed Yukime's wounds, and Yukime also finally realized that John was the masked boy who had saved her at that time. Well, basically everything that happened tonight was just a misunderstanding. If you don't understand the comedy in this moment, it means your taste in comedy isn't like this. Then Yukime returned to the counterfeit money factory and met Alpha there. After Alpha introduces herself to Yukime, she gives her a letter. The letter was taken by Shadow Garden from Geton's room. MCA will soon be destroyed after the Midgar Kingdom finds out about all these events. Even the gold coins in Yukime's factory were taken by Shadow Garden within seconds. In the letter it was written that Geton really loved Yukime. Then Alpha said that Geton had been influenced by the Diabolos cult. Because of that, he became what he is today. Alpha also wants to form an alliance with Yukime because this could be a symbiotic mutualism for them. Alpha explained that Mitsugoshi was actually managed by Shadow Garden, and Shadow had planned the entire attack from the start before the Shadow Garden members made their move. Then Yukime agreed to make an alliance with Shadow Garden. Of course, Mitsugoshi's market could also benefit the Snow Fox Company. All residents of the Midgar capital have trusted Mitsugoshi again, and their banknotes can continue to operate and circulate as usual. On the other hand, Iris and her subordinates forcibly open the MCA safe. Of course, all the gold coin assets there have been used up. The Kingdom of Midgar asks Garter to explain what really happened. Let's go back to the previous snowfield. Shadow has been digging there for days and has not found the gold coins that Geton buried. Shadow even invited Delta to continue this secret mission. Shadow didn't understand what was really going on. Yukime doesn't contact him anymore, and Mitsugoshi also seems fine. This was a strange thing for Shadow because it seemed like nothing had happened. Then Delta demanded Shadow's promise to comply with all her requests. But Shadow still says that he can't comply with Delta's requests that are beyond his limits because Shadow is not Santa Claus. Delta didn't understand the meaning of Santa Claus that Shadow said. After they chatted for a long time, Shadow still didn't find the gold coins. Because of this, he left a message to Delta that he would be leaving for a while. In Shadow's mind, he couldn't return to headquarters because it was likely that the Shadow Garden members would be very angry with him. Therefore, Shadow immediately left as quickly as possible to undertake a journey that was quite challenging for him. He is sure that the storyline he will develop later can make him as cool as he is now. After Shadow moves away from his dig with Delta, Delta suddenly finds something. Now we have entered the story in episode 8. Actually, there is nothing important to tell. Everything in episode 8 is just fanservice and brings out the characters of the girls who become your wives. I'm just telling the gist of the story. A few weeks later, the Mitsugoshi Hot Springs were officially opened to the public. Of course, the members of Shadow Garden also tried out the hot springs, especially Seven Shadows. Well, you definitely understand that moments like this always have something to do with bikini clothes. Eda also shows various kinds of products or research results there. She even offered Shadow Garden members to wear magic jelly that can be shaped into anything, including invisible bikinis. But Alpha forbade them to use the jelly.
スケスケにもできる。スケスケ。スケスケは禁止よ。こんな風にただ遊ぶのなんていつ以来かしら。やっぱり私が選ばれるべきでしたわ。 いいじゃない
やるじゃんバカ犬。
The Shadow Garden members really enjoyed the atmosphere there. We can even see how beautiful Nu is when wearing a bikini. Not only that, we can see how sweet Lambda is when managing activities there. There are many moments in episode 8, and I can't explain them one by one. There are vulgar moments, and there are just casual moments. Even Seven Shadow wears the uniform in the season 1 opening. Several weeks later, 664's team stayed at a place in the Oriana Kingdom. The inn is managed by Marie, a prostitute who comes from a lawless city. It turned out that Sid was also there, who had lived longer than them. But 664's team doesn't know that Sid is Shadow. Even Rose didn't realize Sid's existence because Rose spent most of her time in her room. Marie opened this inn business in the Oriana Kingdom area. She told Sid that the city's conditions had been getting worse for months. The king of Oriana is dead and Rose's whereabouts are unknown. Sid felt that he had to do something to find Shadow's true identity. The next day, Rose had a nightmare about the king being killed by her. Rose couldn't do anything so far even though she had joined Shadow Garden. Not long after, 664 told Rose to immediately get ready to go around the city and meet 559 or Victoria at night. After they met Victoria, they reported the details of their next mission. 664's team and Victoria will investigate the Diabolos cult further tonight. Victoria and Zeta have been scouting the Diabolos cult there for a long time, but they have not found any significant movement from the cult. 664's team and Victoria will look for another way in because the main road to the Oriana Kingdom will be impassable. In fact, Victoria deliberately chose 664's team to help her with this investigation. Victoria already knew that Rose was the Princess Oriana who controlled this kingdom. Victoria told Rose to show her the road and details of the area there. Victoria also knows about Rose's powers. Victoria and Rose are special people who are blessed with extraordinary powers from shadows outside of the Seven Shadows. But Victoria saw that Rose was a weak girl even though Shadow had given her strength. According to Victoria, Rose doesn't belong in Shadow Garden.
あのお方にふさわしくないものは排除する。私はシャドウ様の忠実なるしもべ。だが、弱いな。
Actually, there was a war that hit the Oriana Kingdom. Because of this, the Diabolos cult took part in the war and sent the Children's Army to take control of the Oriana Kingdom. Shadow Garden still hasn't found any information. Why did the Diabolos cult want to control the Oriana Kingdom for a long time? Not long after, they saw the movement of the Diabolos cult heading somewhere. Rose said that the path the cult took was the path to the ruins. The ruins were long ago created to honor the warrior Oriana who fought against the demon Diabolos. After they arrived at the ruins, they saw that Kuodoi of the First Children was leading this army. Then Kuodoi immediately opened something on the altar with the same card as Archbishop Nelson used. Rose did not expect that the altar in the city of Lindberm was also in the Oriana Kingdom. Not long after, Rose's mother, Reina, came to break the seal on the altar. Of course, Rose was surprised after learning about this and she didn't understand why her mother could obey the orders of the Diabolos cult troops. Victoria, who saw this, also continued to stare at Rose. I can understand the meaning of Victoria's gaze, but the most important thing is that Victoria's background is closely related to the town of Lindberm. If I explained Victoria's part in more detail, this video would definitely be longer. After the altar seal was opened, Kuodoi took a ring known as the key. Then Victoria ordered 664's team to prepare for battle with the Children Army. Of course, they were surprised by Victoria's sudden decision. Victoria explains briefly that she knows the ring is the key. Because of this, Shadow Garden must immediately seize the key and kill the Children Army as quickly as possible, including Rose's mother. Even though Victoria is not one of the Seven Shadows, she can still order the members to do things according to her orders. Of course, 664's team was confused about the key Victoria meant. But Victoria didn't want to explain this because they didn't have much time left. Then Rose tried to stop Victoria, but Victoria didn't care about Rose and continued with her plan. Rose managed to withstand Victoria's attack, and her mother was very frightened by this situation. Then Victoria decided to expel Rose from Shadow Garden because Rose did not deserve to be Shadow's follower. Of course, Victoria will kill everyone there at once.
処刑の時間だ。
The next day, New reported to Gamma about 664's team and Victoria who were fighting against the children troops in the Oriana Kingdom area. Then Rose saw her mother there, and Rose was in Oriana's palace now. Doam also looks like he is rushing to carry out all kinds of activities to satisfy his superior, Mordred, a member of the 9th seat of the Knights of Rounds. Doam had promised Mordred to improve his performance at that time. Shadow Garden has actually been providing resistance to the Diabolos cult in the Oriana Kingdom for a long time, but this couldn't make Mordred appear in front of them. Mordred is the ruler behind the scenes who has helped Doam a lot so far in the Oriana Kingdom, starting from the King of Oriana who has been made into a walking doll, then hunting for Rose, and even Doam can get a ring as a key. Currently, the Oriana Kingdom is experiencing a lot of controversy and conflict. Many residents obeyed Doam's orders, and vice versa. Even though Rose was held hostage by the Diabolos cult now, Shadow Garden could still have an advantage in the war later. Then Gamma told New to give a message to Lambda to prepare the Shadow Garden troops as soon as possible. On the other hand, Sid was having breakfast prepared by Marie. He's also thinking of ways to be really cool in the storyline he's creating now. Sid knows that Rose wants to be the next successor to the throne of the Oriana Kingdom, but Sid still doesn't understand. Why did Rose kill her own father? Is it because she doesn't want to be married by Doam? Even though Sid didn't understand the current situation, he still believed in Rose after seeing the determination she showed at that time. According to Sid, if Rose succeeds in becoming the successor to the Oriana Kingdom, she will definitely remember Sid as the character who supported her struggle all this time. It was the best and very cool moment for Sid, who was playing the role of a coward. Not long after, there were bandits who collected money as support for government troops in the city of Oriana. The bandits actually only took advantage of this situation for their own benefit. Marie initially couldn't give them the money because she had already given it to them a few days ago, but the bandits still forced Marie to pay. They even allowed Marie to pay with her sexy body. Of course, Sid immediately helped Marie in a very cowardly way. Then Sid apologizes to Marie for not being able to look after her money. Marie didn't mind it because she was used to being roughed up by men like that. Marie thanks Sid for helping her. Then Sid will leave there to have another adventure in the city of Oriana. Sid wants to pay rent for the room he is already using, but Marie refused because Sid had helped her from the bandits earlier. Marie is worried about Sid's condition, but Sid convinces Marie not to worry about it. At night, Sid saw the bandits who had stolen Marie's money. Of course, Sid immediately steals all their money for his savings for the next 300 years.
あの宿の姉ちゃんとかどういう
結局またこれを売るしかないか。今月の家賃どころか明日の仕入れにも。
つまり僕が正義だ。
On the other hand, Victoria and 664's team are still fighting against the children troops. But unfortunately, 664 and 665 had collapsed because they were unable to fight the children troops. Even so, Kuodoi was surprised that Victoria was still able to fight for 3 days. However, Victoria's magic power has begun to weaken, and this is Kuodoi's chance to kill her. Not long after, Shadow came to help Victoria, 664, and 665. Victoria truly dedicates herself only to Shadow. She even considers Shadow her god. After Shadow heals 664 and 665, Victoria reports the events at the ruins to Shadow. She considered that 666 had become a traitor and deserved the death penalty. Due to 666's behavior, Shadow Garden failed to get the key. Of course, 664 and 665 denied Victoria's words because 666 was not that kind of person. They were also annoyed because Victoria didn't explain what the key meant. Well, even though they were babbling, Shadow still didn't understand what was going on right now. Not long after, Shadow saw a newspaper showing the news that Rose had returned to the Oriana Kingdom. Rose has even declared her marriage to Doam in the near future. Of course, Shadow was very confused and angry because he didn't understand what Rose was thinking. In Shadow's mind, he really needed Rose as queen of the Oriana Kingdom. This is necessary to enhance his role in the storyline that Shadow has created. Then Shadow wanted to ask Rose for an explanation and immediately headed to where she was.
待っていろローズ・オリアナ。
The next day, Lambda took the Shadow Garden troops from the base to the inn in the city of Oriana. Omega and Kai welcome Lambda and they discuss Rose. Lambda feels guilty for failing to educate Rose as a member of Shadow Garden. But Omega and Kai say that Lambda doesn't need to feel that way. Rose seems to have her own problems that are making her unstable. But Rose's punishment stands, and Shadow will carry it out. 7 Shadow and the other members couldn't do anything because Rose's punishment was in Shadow's hands. On the other hand, Shadow managed to arrive at the area near Oriana Palace. He heard various kinds of anger from residents towards Rose. They blamed Rose for killing her own father and just running away. But Sid didn't care what they said. Then Sid thought of a way to get into the palace. He couldn't fly because it was still daytime. Not long afterward, Epsilon accidentally met Sid there and she immediately took Sid to Oriana Palace. Epsilon explained that the people of the Oriana Kingdom really appreciated art. Whether they are nobles or ordinary people, they can be recognized and respected if they have artistic value in themselves. There is only one thing that is not respected in the Kingdom of Oriana: when someone chooses to become a swordsman. Epsilon was a great pianist and was usually called Shillon. By the way, I don't need to explain the details of Epsilon's existence in the Oriana Kingdom. I explained the story about Epsilon becoming a pianist in the first season. Then Epsilon whispers to Sid that Shadow Garden's troops have sneaked into Oriana Palace. Their disguise is still unknown to Doam and his troops. Not long after, they met Doam and chatted there for a while. Then Doam asked Epsilon, "Who is the man you are with now?" Then Epsilon answered, "He is my best student." However, Doam is doubtful about admission permits for Shillon's student. Shillon said her student do not need to use such entry permits. Then Doam said that there were new changes to the rules that were implemented today. But Doam made an exception for Shillon, as long as her student could appear at today's lunch event. Lunchtime arrived, and Sid saw a lot of luxurious jewelry worn by the nobles there. Of course, Sid can make a lot of money from the jewelry. When Sid played the notes on the piano, everyone was amazed to hear how beautiful the song Sid played was. Sid takes this opportunity to take all the jewelry from the nobles, including the key that Doam brought with him. After that, Epsilon and Sid rested in the VIP room with drinks that had just been served by the maid there. Then Sid deliberately takes Epsilon on a tour of the palace. Epsilon understands Sid's intentions and she agrees to accompany him. But suddenly the maid offered herself to accompany Sid. At first Sid didn't want to, but the maid remained stubborn in wanting to accompany Sid. The maid's name was Margaret. She is fully responsible for Rose and Shillon's condition in this palace. Then Sid is forced to accept Margaret's offer. Actually, the maid had an ulterior motive. She was even willing to tease Sid with her breasts. Margaret explained that the temperature in this palace can be maintained because there are artifacts underground. She is also amazed by Sid's previous piano performance. Because of this, Margaret offers Sid to work for her family. Sid can get satisfaction with a very large salary there. Margaret increasingly tempts Sid to work with her family. Yes, that was Margaret's hidden intention, but Sid didn't care about the offer. Instead, Sid asks Margaret about Rose's room. Then Margaret said that Rose's room was actually very secret. But Margaret told him the location because she thought Sid was the most special person. However, Margaret really hated Rose because Rose had killed the king of Oriana, and as a result the Oriana kingdom became very chaotic after the king's death. Then Sid immediately went to Rose's balcony bedroom secretly. Of course, Rose was surprised and immediately went to Sid while crying. Rose invited Sid into the room as quickly as possible before other people discovered his whereabouts. In Sid's mind, Sid would act as if he was speaking very coolly and dramatically in front of Rose. Then Sid says that he really missed Rose, and he was able to get into the palace thanks to disguising himself as a student of a famous pianist. Sid also asked about Rose's marriage to Doam. "Why are you doing this? Didn't you want to be the successor to the king of Oriana?" Then Rose asked Sid not to talk about it, and Sid should forget Rose as soon as possible. After hearing this, Sid looked deeply into Rose's eyes and said a sentence that made Rose's heart love him even more. Sid doesn't want Rose to marry Doam. He wanted Rose to remain in her own opinion and not be controlled by her sadness. Sid said that Rose was a brave woman because she managed to become a great swordswoman. Even though the people of the Oriana kingdom didn't appreciate this, Rose still fought as hard as she could to prove it. Sid understands that Rose has been very lonely all this time. Even so, Rose can still live her life in the path she chooses herself. Whatever obstacles we face, we can definitely believe in the path of life that we have determined. Sid sees that Rose is trying to move away from the way of life she should be living. Sid is sure that in Rose's heart doesn't want to marry Doem, and Sid really needs Rose. Not long after, Doem came because there were reports that Rose was talking to someone in her room. Of course, Rose denied that there was no one else in her room, but Doem saw traces of tears in Rose's eyes and immediately strangled her. Doem wants Rose not to take any more action because they will soon get married. Rose said that Doem marrying her was just a formality. Then Doem strangled Rose even harder because Rose's mother's life was in Rose's hands. If Rose did as she pleased, Rihanna would be killed immediately. It turns out that Sid heard their conversation from Rose's balcony bedroom. Because of this, Sid will do something again so that Rose can move freely in this palace. Sid also thinks the ring he stole from Doem is their wedding ring, even though we know that the ring is the key that Shadow Garden is looking for. At night, Epsilon was resting at the Shadow Garden Inn with Victoria. Epsilon did not blame Victoria for her failure in the mission to seize the key that night. In fact, it was Seven Shadows' fault for not telling Rose about Rihanna. In fact, it was Seven Shadows' fault for not telling Rose about Reina. According to Epsilon, Shadow definitely has other plans to solve Rose's problem. Seven Shadows would not be able to understand Shadow's intentions, so they just need to provide support and wait for Shadow's signal. The most important thing is that Shadow Garden must get the key. If the legend about the Black Rose is true, then this disaster could destroy the Oriana Kingdom. The Black Rose disaster occurred when the Vegalta Kingdom was at war with the Oriana Kingdom in ancient times. 100,000 Vegalta troops could be wiped out in just one night through this disaster. If Shadow Garden acted hastily, the Diabolos cult would definitely take advantage of the Black Rose disaster by activating the key. On the other hand, Doem reported his performance to Mordred. He was sure that Mordred would not be disappointed with his plan this time. Doem has got the key and will marry Rose. Control of the Oriana Kingdom will soon be in his hands. Then Mordred said that if Doem's plan was successful this time, Mordred would prepare 12 seat nights of rounds for him.
継承の指輪は常に私が肌身離さずに。シャドウガーデン、何するものぞ!
On the other hand, Zeta and the Shadow Garden members are attacking the Diabolos cult's research site. Zeta wants to find the tools that Mordred kept in the research room, but unfortunately, Mordred had taken the tool with him. On the other hand, Sid thinks that Rose's mother is also being held hostage by Doem. Because of that, Sid plans to see how Rose's mother is doing now. When Sid was chatting with Epsilon, Epsilon said that the impact of the Black Rose was huge. At least, this disaster will not happen again if Shadow Garden can complete the mission well. After hearing this, Sid was actually interested in seeing the Black Rose disaster in the Oriana Kingdom, although Sid doesn't understand anything about the disaster. Of course, Epsilon was surprised that Sid would say something like that, but Epsilon still appreciates it if that's what Sid wants. Then Sid immediately looked for Rose's mother there, but when Sid found her, Sid was very disgusted after seeing what Rose's mother was doing. Sid left there and thought that there was a very painful drama in the Oriana Kingdom, but Sid still has to show this to Rose to raise her confidence. Sid acts like this because he wants Rose to be the successor to the King of Oriana. At evening, Shadow suddenly visited Rose's room, and Rose was very afraid because she had betrayed Shadow. Rose apologized because she had returned Shadow's kindness in such an evil way. But Shadow didn't care about that, and he immediately took Rose to her mother's balcony bedroom. Their whereabouts are unknown, perhaps thanks to Shadow's magic. Then Shadow told Rose to look into her mother's room, and Rose was finally able to see the truth behind all the events in the Oriana Kingdom months ago.
ローズを最初に殺しておくべきだったのよ。
殺さなければもっと役に立った。
いい操り人形になってくれたわ。バカな夫に薬を持った甲斐があったでしょ。ド M、 もうすぐこの国は私たちのものなのね。
愛してるのはハニーだけだよ。もう少し待ってくれハニー。結婚式を終えればローズは用済みさ。
It turns out that Reina conspired with Doem and deliberately let the King of Oriana become a puppet for the Diabolos cult. Their plan could have gone smoothly if Rose had been captured at that time. But they finally changed plans, and Doem deliberately wanted to get married as soon as possible with Rose. After Doem marries her, Doem will kill Rose and he can take control of the Oriana Kingdom. Rose is shocked after learning the truth, and Shadow asks Rose to get back up, let out her anger at the right time because within 3 days, his wedding to Doem will soon take place. At first, Shadow continued to say cool words to arouse Rose's anger even more. But unfortunately, Rose had fainted and Shadow immediately took Rose to her room. After a while, Rose was still shocked to remember her mother's behavior like that. She continued to cry until her eyes were full of swollen from tears. Not long after, she saw Sid's figure outside her balcony bedroom. Of course, Rose wanted Sid to go as far as possible with her from the Oriana Kingdom. If Rose was with Sid, she could definitely be happy forever. Rose was banished and ignored by her people because she had killed the King of Oriana. Rose has also been betrayed by her own mother. She had given up because she couldn't turn things around in the Oriana Kingdom. In fact, she has betrayed the organization that has helped her all this time, especially Shadow. Then Sid explained something about music that I didn't understand the meaning of. The most important thing is that Sid continues to encourage Rose. Sid also uses his voice as a shadow figure so that Rose can remain strong in living this life.
月に照らされた世界、貴様には何が見える?
Rose doesn't yet know that Sid is actually Shadow. She thought that it was just her imagination. But Rose saw a ring there that Shadow Garden had been after since the beginning of the mission in the Oriana Kingdom. Of course, Rose kept the key because this could possibly be a turning point where the Oriana Kingdom could be in her hands again. On the other hand, Sid actually accidentally dropped the ring. Even Sid thought that the ring was just an ordinary wedding ring, and Sid wanted to sell it when his role in the Oriana Kingdom was finished. Then Sid bathes in the hot springs with Epsilon and discusses Rose's battle, which will soon occur. Sid also said that he had given the main key to arousing Rose's anger. Of course, Epsilon assumes that Sid gave the key to Rose directly, but what Sid means is that he succeeded in uncovering the real truth as the main key to the turning point in Rose's current situation. Sid doesn't understand anything about the ring or the key. Then the Shadow Garden members decided not to look for the whereabouts of the key. Solving this problem depends on how Rose does it later. The night of Doem's wedding ceremony is about to begin. The residents who opposed the marriage were immediately killed by Doem's troops with weapons. On the other hand, Doem is very happy because he can get what he wants soon. The ring is a system where if the King of Oriana dies, the ring will automatically give the throne of the Oriana Kingdom to the successor, who has been determined by the King of Oriana. Doem could become the heir to the Oriana Kingdom if he marries Rose. Then enter Doem's blood data into the ring to become part of the King of Oriana's bloodline. When Doem was very happy, he opened the ring box he had kept for days, and he was surprised because the key was missing. Doem panicked and he couldn't believe that the items he had been guarding could just disappear, even though Doem always put the ring box in his clothes pocket. Not long after, Mordred contacted Doem that the preparations for tonight were perfect, so Mordred will wait for Doem's success to control the Oriana Kingdom. When the wedding ceremony began, Doem was still looking for the whereabouts of the key. On the other hand, Sid has played the piano to accompany the wedding ceremony. The disguises of the Shadow Garden members were also ready in their respective positions. After the priest finished pronouncing the wedding vows to Rose and Doem, Rose said that she was not willing to marry Doem. Of course, Doem became increasingly panicked because his plan was destroyed. Then Rose uses the key and recordings of the King of Oriana are shown in the kingdom and in the city of Oriana. The King of Oriana conveyed the truth about all the events in the Oriana Kingdom to his people. The King of Oriana had been slowly given a drug to lose consciousness by his own wife. This medicine comes from Doem, who really wants to control the Oriana Kingdom. The king already knows that he will die soon, and he can't do anything because there is an organization hiding behind Doem. But the king asked his people not to worry about this problem. He had handed over the throne of the Oriana Kingdom to the princess he loved, Rose Oriana. The king wants his people to trust Rose no matter what happens, because Rose is the only queen who can put the Oriana Kingdom back on the right path. Lastly, the King of Oriana said something to his beloved daughter.
お前を愛している.
On the other hand, other nobles immediately labeled Doem as a traitor and judged him. They actually don't want to be involved in this case and only want to take advantage of Doem. Then Rose said that she would immediately punish Doem tonight because his crime had been exposed. But suddenly something happened there. It turned out that Mordred killed Doem and Reyna, then he immediately activated the key to open a dimensional portal called Black Rose. Mordred says that all witnesses in the Oriana Kingdom must be killed. It was the Diabolos cult's rule to gain power in a territory. Then Mordred summoned one of the strongest demons from another world, Archfiend Ragnarok, to destroy the Oriana Kingdom. Even though Black Rose's form was very beautiful in Shadow's eyes, he thought Ragnarok was just a weak and ugly bat. Mordred was amazed that an ordinary human could say something like that, even giving Ragnarok a strong attack. Because of this, Mordred was curious about the identity of Shadow and his organization. Then the Shadow Garden members removed their disguises and introduced themselves to Mordred. Shadow tells Rose to do something according to the throne she just received. Then Shadow is really interested in Ragnarok and will have fun fighting it. Of course, Mordred said that Shadow was just a stupid and weak man for daring to fight the very strong Ragnarok. According to Mordred, Shadow will not be able to defeat Ragnarok. Soon enough, Beta and Epsilon arrived to fight Mordred. They said that Mordred should step down because he wouldn't be able to win against Shadow. Then Mordred used his sword again to attack Beta and Epsilon. Mordred is confident that his strongest sword can defeat Shadow Garden easily. Beta and Epsilon managed to avoid the attack, and they said that Mordred's sword was an artifact belonging to the elf race. They mocked Mordred back because Mordred only used an artifact sword made by an elven smith. Mordred is actually just a coward who doesn't have any power. Of course, Mordred is annoyed and will kill them easily. On the other hand, Rose has killed the demon beasts that have spread around the kingdom. Rose was sure that the Shadow Garden were also killing the demon beasts in city. Not long afterward, Margaret approached Rose because she wanted to apologize for the treatment she had given Rose. But Rose didn't care about that and told Margaret to open access to the garden. Under the palace garden there are very powerful ruins, so Margaret had to evacuate the palace residents there as soon as possible. Rose will gather soldiers and go to the capital to help evacuate the residents. Then Rose was confused because Margaret had been daydreaming since earlier. In Margaret's mind, she actually felt very guilty towards Rose, but she had to carry out her duties first, so she would talk to Rose after all her duties were finished. Shadow is still fighting against Archfiend Ragnarok, and Shadow only wears magic threads like his role as John Smith. Their fight went on for so long. On the other hand, Rose met 664 and 665. Then Rose entrusted the extermination of beasts to them and the other members of Shadow Garden. The Oriana soldiers who saw this were a little doubtful of Shadow Garden. Rose replies that the soldiers have nothing to worry about. Then Rose ordered the soldiers to immediately evacuate the residents. Not long after, Mordred fell right next to Rose, and he looked seriously injured. Then Beta and Epsilon came and said, "You fought very hard, Rose." They also managed to seize the Black Rose activation device and the Elf Smith's artifact from Mordred's hands. Then they asked information about Diabolo's cult, Black Rose, and Ragnarok to Mordred. If Mordred was confident that he would win this fight, he definitely wouldn't hesitate to answer their questions. Shadow Garden wanted to confirm something from their research so far. Then Mordred explained that Ragnarok would not be defeated by anyone. Ragnarok's magic power is at the top level because Ragnarok comes from the demon world. Based on research that the Diabolos cult already knows, there are many worlds in this universe. The world of death, the world of poison, the world of ice, the world of demons, the world of magical monsters, etc. could be called realms. The symbols of the Diabolos cult reflect the various worlds they already know. All those worlds rotate on their axis, including the world occupied by the Diabolos cult or Shadow Garden now. There is also a world that is the middle point, and the cult has no idea what that world is like until now. According to the Diabolos cult, it is possible that a god because that world cannot be examined by human knowledge. But the focus of the cult's research is not God, but the world rotating on its axis. If one day these worlds collide, it is possible that a dimensional portal could emerge from these worlds. For example, for certain tens or hundreds of years, the world that the Diabolos cult and Shadow Garden were currently in had no magic energy. But after further investigation, this world once collided with the demon world. Because of that, this world can have a flow of magic energy and only certain races can adapt to this magic. The human race is a race that can adapt to the flow of magic. But the Diabolos cult also has doubts. Can humans also be reborn or move to another world? Was it the human race that inhabited this world in the first place? Many mysteries about the human race are still being researched by the Diabolos cult as well. The human race had a lot of advanced knowledge, and it was also possible that there was something in the demon world that had its origins in this world. It is also possible that the demon world absorbed and disappeared a country in an instant, the country of Atlantis. The Diabolos cult was actually not from the demon world, and they only researched creatures from the demon world. They also had a theory that the demons they were researching were demons from the first realm. Meanwhile, Ragnarok is a demon from the fourth realm of the demon world. Black Rose is an artificial gate to connect the demon world and this world. A long time ago, the Oriana Kingdom accidentally opened the Black Rose and succeeded in eliminating 100,000 Vegalta Kingdom troops in an instant. But unfortunately, the Oriana Kingdom couldn't close the Black Rose back. The result was that many demons entered this world and made the Oriana Kingdom fight against them. At the right time, the Diabolos cult cooperated with the King of Oriana, and the Diabolos cult immediately closed the Black Rose. The Diabolos cult had saved the Oriana Kingdom, and they asked for compensation for that service. The Diabolos cult desires a descendant of royal blood, Rose Oriana, but the King of Oriana didn't give Rose when she was a baby to the Diabolos cult. Because of this, the Diabolos cult made the King of Oriana a puppet that Dome had been working on all this time. Then they will also get taxes collected from residents in the city of Oriana. Not long after, Ragnarok's hand fell right behind Mordred. When Mordred looked at the sky, it turned out that Ragnarok had been chopped by Shadow. Of course, Mordred didn't believe that Shadow could defeat Archfiend Ragnarok of the Fourth Realm. Then Victoria reported to Beta and Epsilon that the eradication of the demon beasts in the city was complete. Shadow Garden's next plan is to divide the group into several area points. They had to observe the Black Rose and check the condition of the people around there. Then Victoria looked sharply and cynically at Rose for some reason. Then Mordred immediately used his power to join Ragnarok's body and kill the weak Shadow as soon as possible. In Shadow's mind, he actually didn't want to use I'm Atomic, so that Rose is the main character and her other friends could appear more in the storyline this time. But Shadow saw a stubborn enemy, so he would serve the resistance of Mordred. Shadow has taken Mordred into space, and he's starting said cool sentences. The point is that Shadow managed to get the power he wanted to become an invincible nuclear. Then Shadow starts to activate his magic to lock himself with Mordred. And finally, this is the moment you've been waiting for.
I'm Atomic.
我が主よ。これはまた。ええ、これこそが。夜明けにはまだ早いわよね。
Mordred was killed and Black Rose was destroyed by Shadow's magic. Then suddenly there was a black hole that had magic energy next to Shadow. Of course, Beta and the others were confused because this was the first time they had seen such a black hole. Not long after, the key on Rose's finger broke and Shadow was sucked into the black hole and moved to another world. At the same time, Akane had just woken up from her sleep and immediately went to the evacuation base for the residents who had survived. Akane tells her friend that she will look for some other students. They still lacked an army of knights to fight the dangers that threaten the Japanese city. Akane also wants to find the whereabouts of the family members of the residents who may still be trapped nearby. With her current strength, Akane, the knight, can fight more than her other friends. When Akane walks around town, Akane still often thinks about the person who caught her attention, Minoru Kageno. She understood that Minoru's achievements during school had always been in the middle. Even Minoru's grades in all subjects are always in the middle, including sports grades. His appearance is ordinary and he is not a famous person at school. After Akane arrived at a building, she saw no signs of life there. Monsters have been attacking humanity for a long time. Because of this, Akane had to be careful not to be attacked by monsters suddenly. Not long after, 2 kidnappers who were defeated by Minoru returned to target Akane for revenge. They have also been paid to kill Akane, alias the Savior. When Akane was strangled by one of the thieves, suddenly something happened there.
Shadow!
The black hole you saw in the second season, episode 12, has not completely closed. You can see that after the black hole absorbs Shadow, the scene immediately fades out and changes to a scene on a destroyed Earth, more precisely in Japan. The Eminence in Shadow 3rd season has been announced as a movie, but a release date has not been determined. This video was made on December 20th, 2023, so if there is a new announcement about the Eminence in Shadow, I will immediately notify you.